if you've watched any videos on the theory of perspective, you'll have doubtless seen diagrams such as this. A shape, often just a cube or a box, with lines coming off the corner that represent the perspective angles, and the vanishing points where these lines meet being on a line that goes across through some point of the box or at the bottom of the box that's called either eye level or horizon. These words are used to mean the same thing, this line. I prefer to use eye level myself because the word horizon can mean something else. It can mean the line where the land meets the sky. And while that may happen to be in the same place as the eye level, it may not be in that place. So I find it's more accurate to use the word eye level. But even so, what's this got to do with the scene that we're drawing? Do we really need to know about eye level? Is it helpful at all? Let me show you using some of the drawings that I've done for this Easy Drawings for Beginners series. Now this is a building that we're looking at standing directly in front of the centre, looking straight at it. And the thing to note is that all of the horizontal lines, if you like, in the building are horizontal. The top wall of the house, the roof, the veranda, the porch, and lines which line up horizontally of various elements, such as the bottom of the windows form a horizontal line, where the casement windows overlap, and so forth. Our perspective diagrams aren't particularly relevant when we're drawing a scene from this viewing point, from this perspective. Perspective is simply the way something looks from where we're standing. However, often we're drawing buildings and we're not standing directly in front of them, we're standing to the side. Here's the back of that same cottage. Now, eye level is going to be here. And this makes sense because if you can imagine me going through that door, that's about the level where my eyes would be. But why is it important that we know about eye level? Eye level is important because eye level is the line above which the perspective angles tilt up and up and up, and below which they tilt but in the other direction. And between eye level and, if you like, this lowest line of the building, the angles increase in a greater and greater degree. And what we can see is that if we were to draw all these lines out to the left, all of these orange lines would meet on the yellow line. And if we line up the tops of the windows, they also form the pattern. And so when we think about perspective angles, we need to think about a pattern of lines that, as we go above eye level, they fan upwards. But as you move up the fan, the space between the ribs gets wider and wider. And with our perspective angles, as we move above eye level, the angle increases, and as we move below eye level, the angle increases, but in the other direction. And this can help us to draw accurate perspective angles when we're drawing, if we know this pattern. If we know that above the eye level, we need to go at increasing angles, and below the eye level, we need to go at increasing angles. But how do we know where the eye level is? Now, in this case, eye level happens to line up with where the eye level would be of someone in the building. So here we have another drawing that I did recently, and eye level is about here. And we can see that above that line, the perspective angles fan in increasing degrees upwards, and below this line, they do the same thing. But what we can see here is that the eye level does not line up with the doorway. In fact, eye level is above the doorway, and that's why the top of the doorway line actually slopes upwards. So eye level doesn't have to be at where the eye level of someone standing next to the building would be. So the question is, if eye level is so important because above eye level the angles increase one way and below eye level they increase but in the other direction, how do I know where eye level is if it's not actually eye level to the building? And fortunately, there's a very simple answer. Let's go back to this drawing. Now, I said eye level was about here. Now, there are two ways we can work out where eye level is. One way is by looking at our angles, if we're looking at a photo, and where they cross is going to be on eye level. So therefore, a horizontal line from that point is going to be eye level. So that's one way, but this often isn't very practical because this point can be far off our paper. But there's an easier way, and that's looking for the line in the building that goes directly across horizontally. That's 180 degrees. It doesn't angle up and it doesn't angle down. So in this drawing, we'd be saying this line angles downwards slightly, but this line angles upwards slightly. Now there aren't really any actual lines on this building that are in between. But we know that if there were going to be a horizontal line, it would be there. So looking for where the horizontal line is, or where it would be, is how we can work out where eye level is. And that every line above every other line has to increase slightly in angle. None of the lines are parallel. There's always an increase in angle. So let's look at a few more drawings and see how we can find eye level using this method. Here we have a 4-story terrace, and we can see that there are some obvious perspective angles that are quite extreme. And we get down to here and the lines are still sloping the same direction. But we get to down here and they're sloping the other direction. So here the line still slopes up. This line is pretty straight. So I would say this is eye level. Now, of course, when I look at my photo before I start to draw, I say, with all these lines, where is the line that's horizontal, that's 180 degrees? Ah, it's here. So now when I start to draw, I know that when I draw this line, it has to angle up slightly from the line below it. And when I draw this line, it has to angle slightly from this one. And when I draw this line, it needs to angle up more. And when I draw this line, it needs to angle up even more. And when I draw this line, I've got to make the angle even more. I can't draw it parallel, although it's a common mistake I see. And sometimes these angles can get pretty extreme. When we're close to a building looking up, then the angles can be very extreme. But what we see is that eye level is either where there is a straight line, horizontal line on the facade, or if there is no actual horizontal line, it's in between where the line angles change direction from sloping up to sloping down. Then eye level is here. But sometimes eye level is actually high in our building, not necessarily in the middle or low down. If we look at this recent drawing, we see the perspective angles, and we can see that these top two slope upwards, but these bottom two slope downwards. And so eye level is somewhere in between these center ones. We can see that the bottom of these windows slopes upwards. These rails slope upwards slightly. Eye level is going to be about here, and we can see that would be right because that's about where all these red lines will meet on the yellow line. And so in this case, eye level is up high near the roof. And that's because I took this photo from the upper story of the house across the road, which was on slightly higher ground than this house was on. But once we find the eye level, once we work out where this line will be, then it helps us then to, in our reference or in our view, to see these angles more accurately. And we know then that we have to establish the pattern that above this line, I need to increase the angle for every horizontal line I come across. And below this, I need to increase the angle. Sometimes it's not by much, but it's always by something. One final illustration where it can be useful to know the eye level is when we have a row of things such as these Paris street lamps, and clearly there are perspective angles. Now, if these lamps are all identical, then there will be an eye level, which is the straight line. The straight line here is where this flattened bulb appears in the base of the lamppost. And so on this eye level, on this horizontal line, this flattened bulb will line up with the eye level. And this helps us to keep not just the top and the bottom of our lamps in the right perspective, but the different decorative elements of the lamppost. It helps us keep those all lined up in the correct perspective as well. So sometimes we can find eye level because there is some sort of horizontal line, actually a line on the building, or there's an alignment of various architectural elements such as windows or a distinctive shape on a lamppost pole that let us line up in a straight line. Sometimes there is no actual straight line of anything, but we look to see where the angles change direction. We know that our eye level is somewhere in between the two closest lines that change direction. And why it's so helpful is because once we've established eye level, and we should do this before we put pen on paper every single time, we know that above eye level, the angles have to increase, and below eye level, they increase, but in the other direction. And knowing what to expect makes it so much easier to pay attention to our reference, to see more carefully what's actually there. And once we've observed it more carefully, it lets us capture that visual reality more accurately in our drawing. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope you found this helpful. Don't be afraid of perspective. A lot of videos seem to make it unnecessarily complicated. Knowing where eye level is a tremendous tool in learning to observe our reference more accurately, more easily, and therefore to do a better drawing. I hope this has been helpful. So the very next drawing you do, why not start by finding eye level before you put pen on paper and see if it just doesn't help you capture the angles as they change direction up and down more accurately. But whatever you're drawing and however you're drawing it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.